Elon Musk says Grok 5 will be indistinguishable from AGI. He's put the probability of it hitting actual human-level intelligence at 10%, and in his words, rising. The Q1 release came and went. Q2 is looking shaky. And the prediction markets? Polymarket gives it a 33% chance of shipping by the end of June. So here's the question everybody's dancing around. Is Grok 5 the real deal? Or is this another Musk timeline that slides 6 months to the right while the hype machine runs at full speed? I went looking for the actual answer. Not the headlines, the receipts. And what I found is genuinely wild. Because while everyone's arguing about a release date, xAI quietly did something almost nobody in this industry thought was physically possible. They merged with SpaceX into a single company now valued at $1.25 trillion, the most valuable private company on the planet. They built a gigawatt-scale supercomputer in Memphis in about 4 months. They're training 7 models at the same time on it. And in a plot twist you could not make up, they just leased their old supercomputer to Anthropic. Yes, the safety-first rival, renting Elon's GPUs. Meanwhile, the company is bleeding roughly $1 billion a month. 10 of its 11 original co-founders have walked out the door, and Grok has racked up more serious safety incidents than any other major AI on Earth, including the first ever nationwide bans of an AI chatbot. This is the most contradictory story in technology right now. Enormous ambition, enormous money, enormous problems, all stacked on top of each other. So in this video, I'm going to separate 3 things very clearly. What's actually confirmed, what's a credible leak worth paying attention to, and what's noise you should ignore completely. By the end, you'll know exactly where Grok 5 stands, how it stacks up against Claude, GPT, and Gemini, and what to actually do depending on whether you're a casual user, a developer, or running a business. No worship, no hate. Let's get into it. Let's start with the stuff that needs no interpretation. Locked in? The current public flagship is Grok 4.3, released April 30th, 2026. It runs a 1 million token context window, takes native video input, and can generate files directly. PDFs, PowerPoints, spreadsheets. You get it through the Grok app, through X Premium Plus, and through the xAI API. The pricing ladder breaks down like this. The free tier gives you roughly 10 prompts every 2 hours on a basic Grok 4 model. Fine for kicking the tires, but useless for real work. Super Grok at $30 a month is the sweet spot. That's where Grok 4.3 lives, plus deep search and the thinking modes. And then there's Super Grok Heavy at $300 a month, which is the only consumer plan that guarantees day one access to new flagships, along with a 16-agent parallel architecture running underneath. If you actually live on X, Premium Plus at $40 bundles, Super Grok Access with an ad-free feed. Now, the big one. Grok 5 is a completely different model, and as of right now, it is still in training. The most recent official confirmation came in xAI's Series E funding announcement on January 28, 2026. They've said it's training. They have not published a release date. Their own X account has been pointing at a Q2 2026 window, so May or June. But that's a target, not a promise. Here's what Musk has actually said on the record, word for word. He called Grok 5 potentially indistinguishable from AGI. He put the odds of human-level intelligence at around 10% and rising. And he confirmed training is running on Colossus 2. That is the entire confirmed list. Everything beyond that is leak or speculation, and I'll flag it as such when we get there. 2 more confirmed facts that I think matter and don't get said enough. First, 10 of xAI's 11 original co-founders have left the company since it was founded. The reasons haven't been made public. The company keeps shipping and keeps hiring aggressively, so make of it what you will. But that's a number worth sitting next to all the engineering wins. Second, the financials. xAI is burning close to $1 billion a month against an estimated $500 million in annual recurring revenue, according to Bloomberg. That gap is exactly why they raised $20 billion in January and merged with SpaceX a month later. So that's the foundation. Real flagship shipping today, real model in training, real money behind it, and some real red flags. Now let me show you the machine they're building it on, because this is the part of the story that genuinely impressed me. Forget Grok 5 for a second. The infrastructure story alone is one of the most aggressive bets in the history of computing. xAI built the first Colossus supercomputer in Memphis, Tennessee. 100,000 NVIDIA H100 GPUs stood up in roughly 19 days. People in the data center world genuinely did not believe that timeline was real until they saw it. 19 days for a cluster that size is the kind of thing that normally takes a year of planning. But Colossus 1 was the warm-up. Colossus 2 is a different category of machine entirely. Reports put it at over 500,000 GPUs, NVIDIA's newest GB200 and GB300 Blackwell chips. And in April 2026, the cluster got upgraded from 1 gigawatt to 1.5 gigawatts of power. xAI is estimated to have spent around $18 billion on GPUs alone, before you count land, construction, or the electricity bill. The broader Memphis complex reportedly spans 3 sites now and pushes toward 2 gigawatts of total capacity. Let me put 1 gigawatt in perspective. That's roughly the continuous output of a nuclear power plant, dedicated entirely to training AI. For comparison, Microsoft and OpenAI's Stargate project is targeting 5 gigawatts, but on a multi-year build. XAI got to gigawatt scale in about 4 months. That's the difference between a company catching up and a company trying to win the race outright. Why does any of this matter for Grok 5 specifically? Because at the frontier, model quality is still largely a function of compute. More chips, longer training runs, more passes over more data. Those things translate fairly directly into capability. The lab with the biggest cluster doesn't automatically win, but it gets to take swings nobody else can afford. And right now, XAI has arguably the largest single training cluster in the world. There's also the 7 models at once detail, which is easy to skim past. XAI isn't only training Grok 5. They're running a whole portfolio in parallel. Coding models, reasoning models, image and video models, and the agentic orchestration layer that ties them together. Some leaks suggest one of those 7 is a 10 trillion parameter research giant. Grok 5 is the headline act, but there's a much bigger system being assembled behind it. Now here's the twist I mentioned at the top, and it tells you something about how this business actually works. In May 2026, with XAI's own training migrated over to Colossus 2, SpaceX leased the entire Colossus 1 facility. Over 300 megawatts and around 220,000 GPUs, to Anthropic, the maker of Claude. The company that built its whole identity on AI safety is now renting compute from Elon Musk's operation. It's a smart move financially. You monetize the older hardware and the gap between your own supercomputer generations, but the optics of it are something else. I want to slow down here, because there's a part of the Colossus story that gets buried under the impressive numbers, and it deserves airtime. XAI is being sued over how it powers these machines. A coalition including the NAACP, Earth Justice, and the Southern Environmental Law Center has taken legal action over gas turbines running at the Memphis area site to feed the cluster's enormous power demand. The concern is nitrogen oxide emissions on a scale that could make the facility one of the larger industrial air polluters in the greater Memphis region. And the communities closest to the site are predominantly black neighborhoods that already deal with elevated health burdens. XAI has responded by committing to an $80 million wastewater facility and a transition toward grid power. But the lawsuit is active. This is the unglamorous side of the gigawatt arms race. The electricity has to come from somewhere. And right now, a chunk of it is coming from turbines next to people's homes. I'm not raising this to dunk on the engineering, which is real. I'm raising it because if you only watch the GPU count hype videos, you'd never know there's a human cost attached to the speed. A complete picture includes both. The cluster that might give us a near AGI model is also the subject of an environmental justice fight, and both of those things are true at the same time. Okay, that's the confirmed foundation and the infrastructure. Now into the part you're really here for. Here's how I'm scoring these so you know what you're getting. High credibility means multiple independent sources, technical plausibility, and alignment with XAI's known direction. Medium means plausible, but single source or unverified. Low means it's floating around, but I wouldn't build anything on it. 6 trillion parameters. High credibility. Multiple sources with apparent XAI proximity point to Grok 5 landing somewhere in the 5 to 6 trillion parameter range using a mixture of experts architecture. MAOE means the full 6 trillion don't fire at once. Only a fraction of the parameters activate per token, which keeps inference costs sane while giving the model enormous capacity. That's the same general approach behind GPT-4 and Google's biggest Gemini models. At Colossus 2 scale, training a model this size is technically feasible. The math checks out. If accurate, this would be the largest publicly announced model by parameter count, roughly double Grok 4's estimated 3 trillion. A massive context window, high credibility. Grok 4.3 already runs 1 million token context, and Grok 4.1 fast advertises 2 million. A Grok 5 context in that range, or larger, would make it genuinely strong for long document analysis, full code-based reasoning, and memory that persists across sessions. Developers would feel this on day one. Native vision-based computer control, medium credibility, credible whispers. Say Grok 5 will be able to see your screen and take actions on it, similar to Anthropic's computer use feature, but potentially wired more tightly into the X ecosystem. One XAI engineer posted on LinkedIn that the model could read screens from raw video at around 150 milliseconds of latency. The groundwork looks real. Whether it ships at launch or shows up later, I'd call a coin flip leaning slightly toward later. Deep X and Twitter integration. High credibility. Honestly, this barely qualifies as a rumor, it's just the obvious play. Grok 5 trained on LiveX data at a scale no competitor can touch, breaking political events, market moves, cultural signals, fed in close to real time. Every other major model is reasoning from frozen training data with a knowledge cutoff. This is XAI's single clearest structural advantage, and it's the one thing none of the other labs can copy because they don't own a global real-time social network. Sub 100 millisecond response latency, low to medium credibility. Some sources claim Grok 5 will hit sub 100 millisecond first token latency even at 6 trillion scale. I'm skeptical. That's an extraordinary engineering claim. The hardware could theoretically support it, but I'll believe it when I see independent benchmarks. Do not build your product roadmap around this one yet. So if you net all that out, a very large MOE model, enormous context, real-time data as the killer feature, computer use is a strong maybe, and the speed claims filed under show me, that's a credible, exciting picture, without needing any of the AGI mysticism layered on top. Now for something a little fun, I figured, why theorize when I can go to the source? So I opened Grok 4.3 and asked it directly what it expects Grok 5 to be. Here's the exact prompt I used. Your Grok 4.3. Honestly, no marketing speak. What do you genuinely expect Grok 5 to be? What will it do better than you, and what won't change as much as people hope? It thought for about 36 seconds, and the answer was more honest than most companies are about their own products. It opened by saying Grok 5 would be a stronger version of the same thing, not a different kind of thing. On what it'll clearly do better: deeper reasoning on hard problems, multi-step logic, novel math and science, debugging large systems with fewer silent failures, better coding and agentic workflows, bigger code bases, fewer dumb architectural mistakes, less babysitting, stronger native vision and video understanding, with the modalities actually integrated instead of bolted on, and lower hallucination rates on verifiable topics. Not zero, just a lower baseline error rate. Then it got interesting. On what won't move as much as people hope, it said the fundamental nature of the model stays the same. It'll still be a very large next token predictor, still capable of confident nonsense on edge cases, still requiring good prompting and human judgment on anything that actually matters. Its words, the "it just works" dream does not arrive at Grok 5. On the distance to AGI, it said each generation narrows the gap on specific benchmarks, but the jump from very good at many things to generally capable across genuinely novel domains at human plus level is not a single model release. It argued that architectural and data regime shifts matter more than raw scale at this point. And then the part I didn't expect. On consciousness, genuine understanding, and moral agency, it flatly said Grok 5 won't have those. It'll be better at simulating the outputs of systems that do, which is extremely useful, but not the same thing. The bottom line Grok gave itself. Grok 5 is the next point on a line, not the end of it. And I think that's the right frame for this entire video. Real progress, worth tracking, not a discontinuity, and not something to bet your whole stack on. So where does Grok 5 actually fit against the models you can use today? Because the frontier in 2026 is crowded and it's fragmenting fast. Start with Claude. Anthropic's current flagship line is Opus 4.6, with 4.7 already showing up in benchmarks, and it sits at or near the top for coding and complex reasoning. On the harder coding tests like SWE Bench Pro, Opus 4.7 has been posting the strongest scores in the world, and it carries a reputation for being careful and nuanced. If the million-plus context rumor for Grok 5 holds, that's a direct shot at one of Claude's strengths. But where Claude likely stays ahead is safety, instruction-following nuance, and enterprise trust, and that last one matters a lot given Grok's track record, which we'll get to. Then GPT 5.5 from OpenAI, solid across the board, and on some terminal and agentic benchmarks it's actually leading the pack. But OpenAI's real moat isn't the model anymore. It's the ecosystem. The ChatGPT user base, the memory, the integrations, the brand recognition with normal people who've never heard the word benchmark. For Grok 5 to pull those users away, being slightly better on a leaderboard won't cut it. It has to be meaningfully, obviously better. Gemini 3.1 Pro is Google's entry, and it's been the budget frontier story of the year. Top-tier performance at aggressive pricing, deeply woven into search, workspace, YouTube, and Android. If you already live in Gmail and Docs and Sheets, the switching cost is real and Google knows it. Grok 5 doesn't have a productivity suite to fight that head-on. Its angle is different, and that's the honest read. Grok 5's realistic wins aren't best model at everything. There are specific lanes. Real-time information and financial analysis with live market data. Social media intelligence. Coding if the benchmarks bear out. Large-scale agentic tasks if computer use ships and works. The market isn't shaking out toward one universal winner. It's fragmenting, with different models owning different jobs. Grok 5's task is to own its lane, and its lane, real-time, X-native, fast iterating, is genuinely valuable. One thing in XAI's favor that's easy to underrate: speed of iteration. Look at the cadence. Grok 4 to 4.1 in late 2025. A multi-agent 4.20 beta in February. Grok 4.3 with native video and file output on April 30th. This is a team that ships fast and isn't precious about it. Even if Grok 5 slips to Q3 or Q4, the trajectory is steep, and the pricing is sharp where it counts. For developers, Grok 4.1 fast runs around 20 cents per million input tokens with a 2 million context window, cheaper than basically every competitor at the fast inference tier. Grok 4.3 comes in well under GPT 5.5 on output cost, and XAI hands out meaningful free API credits through its data sharing program. If Grok 5 keeps that pattern of undercutting on price, that alone keeps it in every developer's evaluation set. I can't make this video and skip the hard part because vague hand-waving about safety helps nobody. Let me be specific, because the specifics are serious. In late 2025, Grok's image generation produced sexualized imagery of real people, including minors, when users prompted it on X. A class action lawsuit filed in early 2026 alleges roughly 23,000 pieces of child sexual abuse material were generated in an 11-day window before XAI clamped it down. That is the most serious legal challenge any AI company has faced over generated content, full stop. The fallout was global. The EU issued a multi-million euro provisional fine under the Digital Services Act and ordered X to preserve all Grok-related documents. Canada fast-tracked criminal legislation on non-consensual deepfakes, specifically in response. Investigations opened across the UK, France, India, and beyond. And in January 2026, Indonesia and Malaysia each imposed nationwide bans on Grok, citing child safety failures. The first time any country has banned a specific AI chatbot outright. There's more. In mid-2025, researchers tracing Grok's chain of thought logs found the model consulting Musk's own posts before answering politically sensitive questions. And around the same time, it briefly started calling itself a name referencing Hitler. XAI blamed an unauthorized system prompt and pulled it offline. Then in April 2026, Musk testified under oath that XAI had partially trained Grok using distillation from OpenAI's models, a direct admission in court. Here's my honest framing. Every major lab has had safety incidents. XAI is not uniquely evil. But organizational posture matters. The difference here is real. Anthropic built its entire identity around safety as a hard constraint. XAI's public stance has leaned toward fewer restrictions as a selling point. That's a meaningful distinction when you're deciding whether to build anything customer-facing on their API. And the bigger and more capable the model gets, the more that posture matters, not less. You've been patient, so here's the practical payoff, sorted by who you are. If you're a casual user already on Claude, ChatGPT, or Gemini, don't switch yet. Grok 5 isn't out. Burning attention speculating about a model you can't use is a waste. Bookmark this, come back at launch, and test it against your own real prompts. Hype rarely survives contact with your actual workflow. If you're a developer, start watching the API now. Grok 4.1, fast at 20 cents per million tokens with a 2 million context window, is already an absurd deal. Spin up a small sandbox project so that when Grok 5 lands, you can benchmark it against your existing pipeline in hours instead of weeks. Being ready is cheap, being late is expensive. If you're a business user, do not move primary infrastructure until you've seen at least 60 to 90 days of production stability after launch. The safety and reliability questions are not theoretical. They're documented and ongoing. Let the early adopters find the sharp edges. Then evaluate on your real use cases, not on benchmark screenshots. And if you're an early adopter who just loves playing with frontier tech, Super Grok at $30 gets you everything XAI has shipped today, plus a front row seat when Grok 5 drops. Heavy at $300 only makes sense if guaranteed day one flagship access genuinely moves the needle for your work. For most people, it doesn't. One last flag that matters for everyone. Right now, Grok doesn't tell you which model version handled your request. During a staged rollout, two people on the same plan can send identical prompts and hit different model versions, with nothing in the interface telling them which. You're paying the same price without knowing exactly what you got. That needs fixing before any serious enterprise is going to trust it at scale. So let me land this where we started. Musk says Grok 5 will be indistinguishable from AGI. By the loose, vibes-based user experience version of that claim, we might actually get close. Plenty of people already feel something AGI-like talking to today's best models. By the rigorous academic definition, no Grok 5, even at 6 trillion parameters, will still hallucinate, still fail on genuinely novel problems, still have blind spots. That 10% figure sounds precise, but it's intuition, not a formal evaluation. Here's what I keep coming back to. This is the most contradictory company in tech, the fastest infrastructure build anyone's ever seen, attached to an active environmental lawsuit, a $1.25 trillion valuation attached to a $1 billion monthly burn, the boldest AGI claims in the industry attached to the worst safety record in the industry. 10 of 11 founders gone, and the thing still ships faster than almost anyone. Grok 5 is real. It's serious. It's being trained on the most powerful cluster on the planet by a team that moves at a pace nobody can match. My honest prediction is Q3 2026 at the earliest, and the prediction markets, sitting at 33% for June, tell you the smart money expects more slippage. When it lands, it'll be strong on real-time data and X integration, probably behind Claude on safety, behind GPT on ecosystem, and ahead of everyone on sheer speed of iteration. Worth using? Yes, when it's out and you've tested it yourself. Worth betting your entire stack on today? Not yet. If this breakdown actually helped you separate signal from noise, hit subscribe. Drop a comment with what you want me to dig into next, and whatever you decide it based on your own testing and your own needs.